First of all, I just want to say it's just brilliant to be able to stand up and talk to you guys wearing a silly hat. That doesn't happen very often, so it's very nice to meet you. I've got with me today as well Greg, who's our partner in crime in 3D printing, and Paul here, who is the head of development for Campus Interactive on the augmented reality side. So I think the first thing to say is that they're really important, and I'm not a guru. So what I'm going to do today is just talk about 4 trends or technologies which have the potential to really enhance and change the face of education in the future. Some of those or 2 of those technologies are here and now, and that's basically the 3D printing and augmented reality. The other technology I'm going to talk about is the wearables. Wearable technology, and in particular Epson Movero and Google Glass. And that technology is here, but it's sort of still getting there. So I think probably we'll really see that stuff kicking in over the next couple of years. And then finally, I'm going to have a quick look at gestural interfaces as well, which is, I think, still quite a long way down the line. But again, when you take these technologies and look at them, they've got quite a potential for education. After I've done that, it's a bit tricky in a lecture theatre, but I'm going to get you all into little groups and we're going to start doing some thinking and become creative. So what I want to try and look at is what the technologies that I've showed you. I'm going to give you a very brief overview, but then we're going to start getting creative and look at how we might be able to apply these technologies to your current situations and environments to see if there are problems that you have that we can then solve using the technology. In my opinion, there's no point in doing something just for the sake of doing it because we have the technology. There has to be a really meaningful reason for using it and a sense of purpose, and to solve things or enhance or engage make the learning environment more engaging, rather than just doing it for the sake of being a gimmick. So I recognise a few faces here. So some of you have played, for example, the augmented reality tombola. Great as a gimmick for something like this, and it works. But that's not what the augmented reality technology is really about, in my view, for education. It has a much more meaningful purpose to it. So that's the augmented reality. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's really a very hard thing to explain. It's a very hard thing to explain when you go back to your organisations as well. And that's because it's primarily a visual and very visual subject. But if you are to try and explain it in words, it's just a way of superimposing digital elements onto the user's view of their environment by overlaying computer-generated content that works in real time. I mean, it's so, try and explain that to people and they just switch off. So the best way to explain augmented reality is to show it. But essentially, I look at it as a bridge between your traditional media, print media, and your digital assets. And as well as recognising 2D print images, the really clever stuff comes in object recognition, so 3D object recognition. So for example, if you go downstairs afterwards, or you may have seen already, we've got a mannequin that's laid out on a table. And the technology recognises that mannequin, and as a result of that is then able to play a video which introduces patient scenarios into the medical environment. So really what it is, it's picture recognition for the 2D stuff and object recognition for the 3D stuff. And then there's a third part to it as well, which is environment tracking. So you can use it geospatially. It will recognise buildings and other elements in the environment. And so for education, that has quite a lot of use. So what I'll do now is I'll just show you a quick video of the object tracking, which went out on BBC Click for Sheffield Hallam University's introducing patient scenarios. And then I'll just show you a couple of bits of AR down here. One's the 2D print image recognition, which some of you may have seen already downstairs on the t-shirts. And the other is what we call snap CADing, is that right? Have I got that right, Paul?
CAD snapping.
CAD snapping, that's it. And in this case, we've got an architectural model, and we'll show you what we've done with that. So, without further ado, I have to do this.
Have you got any pain at the moment? Right. In a profession like nursing, care and compassion are key.
The training here at Sheffield Hallam is split between helping on real wards and study sessions often spent with this chap, known as Sim Man.
Well, he can blink and it looks like he's breathing, plus it seems that he can give blood. But this is still a dummy. So if I wanted to actually engage with him, well, that would feel quite unnatural, and that's where the AR comes in. Once you pick up the tablet and you hold it over him,
Nurse, help me.
that 3D image recognition translates the dummy into a real person. And when you can see that distress, well, the whole situation certainly feels a lot more real.
And that's what the students here are finding. This app consists of varying setups that have been recorded by actors to put a person's face and an image of a person's distress in their mind.
It's getting worse. It's been bad all night. If you could just sit me up, I'd probably be a bit better, but oh dear.
Once the introduction has been made on the tablet, the mannequin can be remotely controlled from a computer to continue reacting in keeping with the scenario. Of course, live actors could be used, but the lecturers here believe that the recorded performances allow for a more cost-effective and consistent way of learning.
These students interact quicker and they interact more often with the mannequin. And what that does is let us look at the students and see how they talk, how they care, and how they provide compassion to the mannequins.
Even with 12 to 14 hour shifts commonplace and sometimes facing life or death situations, it's important the right level of care and compassion is maintained.
Nursing has its challenges, and when you're caring for a patient, particularly a deteriorating patient as our scenarios are around, it's not just about talking to somebody, it's about thinking about the technical skill that you're doing too. So quite often students can be really fixated on the technical skill that they're doing and forget about how they're communicating with the patient.
We'll just pop this over your face.
And the students who'd learnt this way felt it made the scenarios feel more realistic.
It's about engaging straight away. Once you're actually listening to the patient, you can look at the expressions on their face, the tone in their voice, so it enables you to empathise straight away, as opposed to a mannequin where you almost feel silly. I personally feel empathy comes from within, but having these situations within a university setting, using the AR, it's pulling that empathy out of people.
There could be other uses for this system too. For example, reports just this month suggest some healthcare workers could be I
think you get the gist. I'll move that on, hopefully. So there's an example where this technology is being used in education and for learning. And with something like that, I think the interesting thing about it is just even that idea is so translatable across other things. It can be used in sports therapy and physiotherapy and St John's Ambulance and teaching resuscitation and all sorts of other things. So although we tend to focus on education, actually the applications run much wider. So what I'm going to do now is we'll just show you some of the 2D recognition and we'll show you some of the CAD snapping as well. And this is where my technology. Oh, there we go. So
this is the Just AR browser. So if you've got a t-shirt, you can overlay your app on the t-shirt and watch it come to life.
Unfortunately, you can't hear the audio. Oh, it's just died. Yeah, the plugs come out, I think. So what you're seeing here is what we call in-page video for AR. So because the image is contained within the graphics. You've also got video which can be triggered and play straight in the media player on your device, so you don't have to hold it over the image for a long period of time. So what I sort of recommend to people is if you're going to use in-page video, you probably only want to be doing 10 or 15 seconds of it to tease them, to encourage them to then engage in another way. It might be to go to a website, find out more information. It might be to share something on social media, or whatever. And so for things like prospectuses, front covers of prospectuses, that's quite good because it is quite powerful, and then they can go through and find the course that they want to in a more traditional way. But they're already engaged, and it's just that bridge between the two. So what we've got here is the CAD snapping, and this is where I think that these new technologies are going to start getting really powerful, because that's a 3D printed architectural model designed by a student and printed out on a 3D printer. So from there they can see what their design looks like. It's very small, and from that we can then augment it, so we can render it and see what it might look like with a brick facade, with a slate facade, with stone or whatever. And we can also do things like, for example, look at traffic mapping and traffic flows, or import CFD files which will show airflow and that sort of thing. And again, although I mean it's very cool, but it's also a really useful way of engaging in that environment. And again, this type of technology can be used and transferred across lots of different things. Happy? Good. Right. Let's see if I get this to work again. Okay, so 3D printing. I'm just going to hand over to Greg because he's the true pro on this. Greg, just tell us about how we get to the point that we can actually print something like that. What are the steps that we would need to go through to get to that point?
So there are two ways you could start out. Either you could make something by hand and scan it in, or say you wanted to create a person, you could scan in their body and turn that into a CAD file.
Is that expensive?
It can be for a startup in terms of equipment cost, but I mean, to go and have yourself scanned would be much more economical. Or you can start out with a CAD file, so design from scratch something that you'd like to be scanned, printed. So that would be something like an engineering part or a piece of art or something. That then gets put into a specialist bit of software which chops your model up into lots of small layers. Depending on what type of 3D printing you're using, either it will tell a print head where to go and squeeze some molten plastic, or it will tell a laser where to go to solidify some photoreactive polymer, or it will tell a laser where to go to melt a powdered metal or plastic. And then it just builds up layer after layer until you end up with your bespoke part like this. So 3D printing is probably more suited to one-offs or low production runs. It works well with investment casting, so you can make a plastic part, check that it's what you want, and then go and have it turned into metal.
So for example, in like jewellery making courses and design courses and that type of thing, you can make something that's unique, one-off, and then extrude it and fill it with metal.
And something that would be incredibly labour intensive to make by hand becomes quite simple to make using this kind of technology. So it's not a mass production technique because the unit cost remains the same, but it certainly is cheaper than making moulds for a new prototype part.
Is anyone working with 3D printing at the moment? And what are you doing with it?
Just using it in schools, fairly simple stuff. We've got two that we've had for about 3 months, I guess.
Oh, really?
The schools that I work with, and just using it to actually print out the things that they've been designing, and using it in Tech GCSE.
Right, and so
lots of model penguins at the moment.
Oh, right.
How are you finding them reliability-wise?
One of them's been fine. The other one's been back to the repairers 3 times in the months that we've had it. So not great.
Yeah, that's the problem with the kinds that schools are going to be able to buy within their budgets. It's going to be a lot of teacher investment time, fixing these things, keeping them running.
And so you're using that in tech environment. Are any of the other classes or courses, so for example, anyone in engineering or in design, creative design type courses using it? interesting. And so this infographic, which has been up for a while now, kind of illustrates some of the potential uses for 3D printing in the classroom. And again, all those things, what I like about this new technologies that we're looking at here is that all these things, again, when combined with something else, can become really powerful. So, for example, if you were to print out a 3D molecule, polymer or whatever, and then overlaid that with an augmented reality layer, and you can see the neutrons and the protons and all the bits and pieces spinning around, it's really very visual and very engaging. And then how do we take two molecules and link them together to form another molecule and things like that? And that's something that it sort of involves almost gamification in a way, which is a really good way of learning, and tactile as well. So you've got a mixture of tactile learning and that visual learning. So we've talked about it. One of the questions I've got for you again then is, in terms of the different types of substances you can use to create your models, what are the different? I mean, I've heard people printing in chocolate, for example. Is that true?
Yes. The problem there, though, is that normally people have taken what was a filament printer and put a big syringe on the top that they then keep warm and just squeeze the top of the syringe. And the trouble with that is you're really limited with the amount of volume you can print, because you have a massive chocolate that you're moving around all over the place. So actually, Ichan and I have been experimenting with having a tundish to one side and a silicone tube and a peristaltic pump on the outside, so we'll be pumping chocolate in. Haven't got it to work quite yet, but it will mean that we can just...
That'd be good in any environment.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for that, Greg. The next thing that fascinates me, and again I think has big potential, particularly in the learning environment, and again links in with some of these other things that we've been talking about here, is Google Glass or Epson Movero or Vuzix or any of the augmented reality glasses that are coming out. Because if we, for example, took the Sheffield Hallam thing where they're introducing patient scenarios, those nurses have still got to stand there with both hands holding an iPad, when really they need those hands for their clinical work. So if they're able to visualise the same thing through a Google Glass or an equivalent, then it means their hands are free to do what they need to do. And actually, it wouldn't just be about introducing patient scenarios, it would be about the continued journey for that patient right the way through. It's a kind of technology as well that I think could be moved into virtually every area of education, and I think it's the kind of thing that when costs start coming down and technology starts improving, that in 5 to 10 years' time it will be a very commonplace thing. So I've got another little vid. This one goes on a bit, so when you start getting bored, just wave your hands and I'll turn it off.
Something amazing. It was as though in the past I had dreamed, or I had jokingly envisioned what we might do in the future with things, and all of a sudden I was looking at the future. I continue to be blown away by this technology. Well, I think medical education is always tethered to how you deliver healthcare, and that it's technology like this that is going to become imperative to how we deliver care. Therefore, we need to maximize its value and its role in education.
I can see immediately where glass could be used in the medical education environment. Google Glass has, and there are incredible possibilities within medical education. Certainly within my area where we actually teach doctoring skills, the beauty of either the student wearing glass, the instructor wearing glass, or even our standardized patients wearing glass. In fact, we have done delivering bad news scenarios where those encounters are recorded and students are given feedback.
And that's in fact what we found. The cancer is...
Oh, there we go again. Stops itself. Maybe you didn't want to hear the bad news. I'll play back here. I don't know why that is. It's a shame you can't see some of the more of the video, because you can actually see the glass being used in its content.
That, we'll include it in
Okay, yeah, we'll do. I feel like this is really sort of heavily medical focused at the moment, but it's not just about medical education. It just is that part of education at the moment seems to be embracing these sorts of technologies and doing some quite good stuff with it. And I think they've also got some of the budgets for it as well. But again, you can see there, or certainly I can see how that sort of technology and wearable technology combined with augmented reality can be used in teaching teachers, in teachers teaching, and introducing it into their classrooms from this high now through to the top. And finally, my final scoot through these things. This is gestural. I struggle to say it. Gestural. What's the word I'm looking for? Gestural stuff. But gestural interfaces. That's the word I'm looking for. And the best way that I can describe this when I'm trying to speak to people is I just call it, it's like Minority Report. So if you've seen the film, it's about moving things around with your hands and with your body, and in some cases your eyes as well. And I've got another video which will last about 30 seconds to show you some of the stuff that's being done on this. But this, as I say before, this is still, I think, at least 5 years off before we can start doing something really, really good with it. Oh, that's gone back. Stop itself about 2 minutes ago. So yeah, that kind of gives you an idea, a glimpse into the future. There's a lot of work being done in this area at the moment, and in fact I was talking to a gentleman earlier who's talking about the fact that they're scanning libraries of stuff and it's being able to be accessed through gestural behaviours and things like that. I don't know a great deal about it myself, and maybe some of you guys out here do, so hopefully when we're talking later on we can talk more about that sort of thing. So really just to bring it all together, I know it's been a really quick scoot through the things and hasn't been very in-depth, but the reason I wanted to do that was I just wanted to give everyone a flavour and then take that flavour and let's just see now if we can become really creative and look at, in your case, is look at your individual situations and say, how can I enhance what I'm doing in my environment, either for myself or for my colleagues or for the people that I might be teaching or whatever. And we'll take a bit of time to do that. So if you get together in little groups to do that, and then we'll just discuss it, because I think one of the best ways to learn about this sort of stuff is just to ask the questions. So you might see some stuff up there and go, well, yeah, that's all great, but how does it happen, for example? Is it expensive? You know, kind of really fundamental things. Does it take a long time? Is it you know, a lot of human resource investment in it, for example? And what's the best way of doing things? So, for example, in the augmented reality sphere, which you know we're heavily involved in, we have provided a solution whereby we give institutions, colleges, and universities their own branded AR apps, which everything in the campus environment runs through. So it's not a case of people having 12 different apps to do 12 different things. So it could be that single AR app might, for example, augment a poster in the student union. You could buy tickets for the grad ball and see a video of last year's thing. So something as simple as that, which isn't learning related at all, but that would run through the same thing as maybe the medical mannequin, some architecture stuff, something where perhaps in you know, using geology or artifacts that you want to hold and see in 3D space. So you've got all those elements. So you've got both the student experience side and the learning side all being drawn into the same thing. And all these technologies on their own are very, very interesting, but the bit that sort of fascinates me is that sort of bit in the middle where they overlap, because that's where I think we start to see some real power. And we've only seen one small thing today, but that model being augmented in that way. We're developing something at the moment, for example, where we're creating an online resource. Students can download organs, a heart. Now they can download that as a 2D printed sheet, and then we can put a 3D model in space for them to have a look at that. Or they can look at the heart, hold the iPad over the heart, which has been printed out using 3D techniques. And then they're able to administer adrenaline, see what the heart looks like in shock visually, because that's quite a hard thing to teach apparently. And then administer the right amount of adrenaline and see what happens to the heart under certain scenarios. And again, it's that kind of slight gamification of it. It's one thing for a lecturer to be standing there saying, right, this is what a heart looks like, goes into shock, you prescribe this amount of adrenaline in these doses at these times or whatever. It's a very different thing to actually having a go yourself and killing someone. You know, that's the way we learn. So if we take a bit of time now, just to have a chat with your colleagues and get into little groups, and then in 5 minutes or so we'll pick a few out, we'll start chatting about them, we'll feed loads of ideas in and see what we come up with. Okay?
If you need to ask any questions, I can... Because we're kind of at the starting point, and cloud hosting is very expensive. We're trying to keep the costs down. So right down as well. So we are looking at things to make it affordable to. Yeah.
We've got some guys here from Leeds College of Music that interestingly are doing some stuff in AR already. One of the questions I've been asked, and it might be something that some of you also have thought about with regards to augmented reality, is what are the best apps to use? There's a number of generic apps off the shelf that are free or virtually free. The names that you may have heard of, or if you haven't, I'll give them to you now. One is called Erasma, and a couple of years ago they used to sponsor the Tottenham shirt, so you may have seen their logo on that. There's a Dutch company called Layar, L-A-Y-A-R, and then there's a couple of other ones on the fringes as well. I shan't bore you with them. But the principal thing about those apps is that they are 2D print recognition. So, and they're very good for that too. They work well in the publications and publishing industries and packaging and things like that. But there is the software that we build our stuff in is by a German company called Mataio. And the reason we chose them is because not only does it do the 2D print recognition, but we can do things like the CAD snapping that you saw for architecture. We can do the object recognition that we've seen with the mannequin, and face tracking. There's a new face tracking thing out at the moment, which we're also demoing downstairs if you want to have a go at that. There is a department at the University of Manchester called Mimus, and they have a thing called Project Scarlet, which is JISC funded as well. And our friends here at Leeds College of Music, for example, are developing something with Mimus. And the great thing about what they're doing is they're building it in the same technology. So if they then want their own Leeds College of Music branded AR app, the projects that they're working on now can be imported into that architecture, and then indeed anything else that's augmented on campus or on other courses or whatever can be pulled in through that one application. So you're not there going, oh, is this in Layer? Is this one in Erasmus? Is this one in Blipper or whatever it might be? So what I'm going to do is just introduce my newest friend, Craig Golding. Aha! Craig, just tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, hi, I'm Craig, Leeds College of Music. I head up the degree in music production back at the college, and with some help from my colleagues Ruth here and Guy's also will be involved in it, probably from the FE side of things. We're putting together essentially a teaching and learning tool for use in the recording studios, of which we have at least 7, 8 or 9, something like that. Really, it's looking at the 3D object recognition. So we went through the whole thing of Zappa, Erasmus, the whole 2D thing. We visited some friends and colleagues over at Hull University, who we're currently validated by. They're developing things over there on that side of the fence. Looked at those, but essentially because we're talking about mixing consoles, desks, 3D objects, equipment in the studios, we're wanting iPads to be able to recognise those 3D objects and then superimpose layers on those objects to be able for us to enhance teaching and learning. So the students, when the tutors such as myself aren't in the studio with them, they can essentially have a very interactive way of finding their way around the equipment, selecting an area of the desk, saying what does that area there do. They can touch that area, and once the object's been recognised, touch that area. That layer then expands up into the different sections within that part of the desk. They can then see annotated kind of text, comments. They can have audio. They could have a small video playing, which might be demonstrating a particular setup. And then further down the line, although I get told off at this point because I get carried away, usually by Ruth, but further down the line there would be things like showing signal flow on patch bay, which is essentially electrical signals through cables. So again, there's a very close kind of synergy between ourselves and the medical profession in that sense, in terms of talking about, I presume, blood flow and things like that. And then even further down the line, an idea that I had would be microphone recognition. So if a student went into a recording studio and said, I really like the sound of that, what microphone were they using? I've not seen that before. They hold up their iPhone. The iPhone recognises the 3D image and possibly the logo on the mic or the brand of the mic. And then it brings up a whole load of data about that mic, maybe the applications for that microphone. And that wouldn't just be a microphone in our studios at Leeds College of Music. That could be in a professional audio recording shop up the road in Leeds. We have a production room, so a student could go in there and say, I really like, look at that mic, I've not seen it before. Instead of talking to a salesman, they can go like that and find out everything they want to know, save it, take it away with them.
Yeah.
Sounds so cool.
And I think that's a really interesting use case there. And the next step, I think, probably for something like that, again, would be then to put it onto glass. So if the mixing desk or whatever needs hands-on stuff, and you've got an iPad over it, you might find that you can still use your hands and get the information at the same time. Is anyone else doing anything like that at all in their current environments? No. Would anyone else like to do that in their current environments? Great. So my friend from Hull who didn't win the tombola, are you doing anything in AR or?
Well, I'd like to play with the augmented reality, as I'm sure a lot of people have done. I come from engineering background, so hold it over a piece of equipment and short video, say obviously with a multimeter or something like that,
Yeah.
it recognises a standard piece of kit or a standard component, and it will send you to a resource that's got some info.
Yes.
about it.
Yeah.
We've just been discussing trying to maybe use it more where demos are used. Try and get a teacher talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And also the great thing about it is you can take it away as well, so they can take it away and still learn. So, and again, with engineering parts or products or whatever, some of them might be really expensive. They can't go, but you might be able to have a 3D printed model that you can take back and just play with and fiddle with and get the extra information
That's the
from.
other thing that I was going to say as well. We've had a 3D printer for a good number of years.
Oh,
now.
good.
And used it for rapid prototyping and things like that.
Yeah.
My colleague from the same college didn't even know we had it.
Yeah. Guys, thank you very much. We're downstairs, so if anyone wants to chat to us about things, then we're more than happy to. Thank you for your time.